Hi, this is Misha, and trying to give more alien content here. I thought we'd look at the Romulan Warbird. This was the quintessential Romulan ship from the Next Generation all the way through Deep Space Nine, and even made a few appearances in Voyager. This was their ship. It was brand new for Next Generation. It appeared in the final episode of the first season called The Neutral Zone. And this was the first Romulan ship we'd really seen since the Bird of Prey in Season 1, although it reappeared a couple of times later in the original series. We also saw the D7 under Romulan control, which was really Klingon hull. So yeah, the Romulans were pretty underrepresented. So when they gave him this ship, they gave him a big, bad, unique ship, and I really think it's a neat one. Now the Seagull Moss model, I obviously knew what a Warbird looked like. You could get a number of models of these in the late 80s and 90s, and there was the Playmates toys and Micro Machines, and nevertheless I had to get the Eagle Moss one because I just had to. There's not enough Romulan ships anyway. And it's a nice one. It's got a lot of metal. One of the two hulls is metal, the other one is plastic, polymer. The engines do have clear inserts, green, and it's a pretty substantial size. The head is metal as well. Well, we first encountered this vessel in Star Trek in 2364, so we can assume that it was introduced a little before 2360 to 2363, sometime we're in that time frame. It was about 1,350 meters long, very big. About 63 decks, but notice that quite a bit of negative space is in the middle, so most of our inhabited area would be our head section, the bird's head. Then the bottom hull is mostly storage shuttle bays, and from what I understand, the top hull and the rear is more of engineering and such. This had a crew of 1,500 officers and just enlisted, plus a large capacity for troop transport. It had multiple shuttles and support craft, even some scout craft. It featured a 4th generation cloak. Generation 1 would have been what was seen in Enterprise. I know that irks some purists, but it was there. Generation 2 would be from Balance of Terror in the original series. Generation 3 would be from the Enterprise incident in the original series. And then Generation 4 was seen in the neutral zone with this ship. And it was expressly stated on screen that they had improved their cloak. It has plasma torpedoes, as evidenced by a statement from Deep Space Nine. It has both pulse and beam style disruptors. It has standard shields, armor, and most interesting, rather than being powered from a matter-antimatter reaction system, it is powered from an artificial singularity. And if you don't know what that means, basically it's a black hole. It has an artificial, small little black hole in it, which has some advantages and some disadvantages. Once turned on, it's permanent. In that sense, it's kind of like a nuclear reaction, but it gives great deals of power. But basically, it's Star Trek's version of nuclear. It's powerful, but also more dangerous. Warp speed on these, especially with cloak, is a little limited. They can cruise pretty comfortably at warp 7. Over that, though, they start to have issues with their cloak not being fully effective. And over warp 9, it's especially for sustained periods, they can do permanent damage to their engines. Keep in mind, this is a massive ship. So, 7 cruise and warp 9 maximum. With going over warp 9, you're going to get permanent damage to the ship, as we saw from the episode Tin Man in Next Generation. This was a military craft. Like I said, it can carry troops, but it also was a good support craft for colonies. It could carry medical supplies or just food or, parts. It also had science stations. It wasn't strictly a military craft, unlike, say, Jem'Hadar and some others we see. It did have quite a good science suite because the Romulans were into science as well, usually for military applications, but they were related to Vulcans, so. It also had good sensors, very good, and a lot of facilities for espionage and basically spying. This was top of the line when it was introduced in the 2360s, replacing older Warbirds. We know that they had ships called Warbirds earlier because of the Enterprise C from yesterday's Enterprise, but that would have been 2340s, and these were an older class. Speaking of class, this had a few names. Dideridex is the most common name, which is named after a Romulan politician, Dideridex. Also, B-type was a Federation designation. We can kind of assume that A-type were the Warbirds encountered in the 2340s. At least it's a logical assumption. So yeah, this was the Romulan Warbird for most of the 80s and 90s of Star Trek. This was frontline in the Dominion Wars. It was produced in large numbers through the 2360s and into the 2370s, but was eventually supplanted by the Valdor type, which we'll talk about in a different video. Then even though the Valdor class would start to replace it by the 2380s, these would still remain very much frontline until the end of the century. It's a large, powerful ship. It outclassed a Galaxy as far as firepower. And 2 of these were a match for a Galaxy and a couple of Klingon cavorts. So, neat ship. We see more of the interior than we do some of the other ships. It's well fleshed out in series. This Eagle Moss model, as I said, has lots of nice metal and weight to it. Good detailing. One interesting thing that they did, mine's a later one, the original stand, these prongs on the bottom weren't as long, they were just short back here, which led to these slipping off the stand. But newer ones come with an updated stand that is quite very secure. So good on them for seeing a small little error or issue and correcting it. So yes, the Romulan Warbird. It's a classic. If you can't tell, I really like this ship. I like Romulan ships. I like the design aesthetic. And I wish we had more Romulan ships in canon. I really do. I would have loved to have seen, like, say, the A-type Warbird or more from the movies. The Romulans are just really underutilized after the Enterprise incident in the original series. Oh, well. Maybe the reason I even don't mind Nemesis is that at least it had Romulans in it, and it wasn't more Klingons or whatever. Not that I have a problem with Klingons, but... yeah. Alrighty, guys. That's about all I can ramble on here, I believe. Any questions or comments, or just want to talk about nerd stuff, always happy to do it. If you could, like, share, and subscribe. And also, if you haven't, check out some of my other videos. This is Misha, and I will catch you next time. See right here, wouldn't it be cool if I had like a special effect to make it look like it was cloaking? Yeah, that'd be neat, wouldn't it?